Okay, quick notes before we jump into the next round of stuff. We've had a few shows confirmed to be to core. Which ones were those? Yaiba, Samurai Legend, and Me and Alien Mumu. We still have two that don't technically have end dates yet, so I'm not sure if they're gonna be split two cores or not. And we still don't have any subs for the Lupin OVA yet, although I think it just technically came out today, so we'll see if it does. But in any case, I'm going to actually bump down the number of end cap shows that we have, just to make the videos like slightly more beefy. So I'm going to bump down Rock is a Lady's Modesty and just put it back into the list proper. So instead of like 6-ish random shows per video, we're gonna get 7-ish. But in any case, it's also still fairly early in the wrapping up season stuff, so we only have a few up top here that are still done. So we're just gonna go the same as the last video, and we're gonna do these 7 shows right at the top here, just in order as they are. So up next is The Dinner Table Detective. Have not heard anyone talk about this at all. I assume it's a mystery series. Maybe it's a little more clever than I expect it to be. Let's find out. Yeah, not super into that one. The whole mystery setup felt extremely clunky and just very like piecemeal, just sort of like, here's a clue, here's a clue, here's a clue, here's a clue. Just a series of clues and a series of character interactions that do technically connect with each other, but it's just so very not engaging about it. It is very sauceless. There's really not a lot here as to why I should care about any of these people, because we really just get dropped right into the mystery build-up. The crime happens like probably like a third of the way through the episode, after the initial cold open montage of the crime happening. So we really don't get a lot of time to dwell on that. I have a feeling this is going to be like an episodic series, so it's probably going to be like that all the time. I would have much preferred like an arc-based structure for this series, where we get like a few episodes per it. And maybe that'll happen for some stuff in this, but it's definitely not going to happen for this first episode, because it's moving way too fast. It's just, I don't really care about anything that's happening, is the long and short of it, I guess. The art direction is certainly stylish, a little off-putting with its camera work sometimes, but stylish nonetheless. This is a Noitamina block show, after all, apparently, which I don't know. Have I ever talked about the Noitamina block on the seasonal wrap-up show? I must have, since I've been doing this for like 4 years now. But, I feel like I haven't mentioned it in a while. So, the Noitamina block is essentially like a specific anime block that's supposed to feature like anime to draw people into anime. So it's not typically filled with stuff that's very tropey or like knee deep in like anime genre. It's typically, well, stuff like this, like a mystery series, or like a more like Psychopaths was a Noitamina show, if I recall. Your Lie in April was a Noitamina show. I think also Promised Neverland was as well, but I'm not entirely sure about that one. Sarazanmai was a Noitamina show. So it's, you know how pretentious people have been been making the elevated horror genre a thing? it's kind of like that. This is elevated anime, which doesn't always work, like this time. I just don't really care about anything that's happening. I respect, well, not respect, I can see the work that's going into setting up the mystery. I just don't care about the mystery. I just don't care.
Alright, Dinner Table Detective off the list. Up next is From Old Country Bumpkin to Master Swordsman. I have seen more people than I was expecting talking about this show. Still not a lot, but more than I was expecting, and it got a decent amount of promotion. I have no expectations. Maybe I'll be surprised. Let's jump in.
Well, I got a little further with that one, but still not all that interested. I got a little over an episode and a half into From Old Country Bumpkin to Master Swordsman. It's totally fine. Perfectly, like, it's like a strong 5, probably. I'll get to why I ended up dropping it in a sec, but this was what struck me right away about this show is that it's definitely a waifu heavy show, but it's also in the action fantasy genre, in the vein of like throw waifus at the wall and hope that you like at least most of them. And I think I'm getting too old for this kind of show, man. Like, yes, this has an older protagonist as the main character, but I don't think this is for an older audience at all. In any way. Like, just... This is very deceptively the MC is like a super cool badass guy that's totally unassuming about his super badass stuff and all the chicks want his dick kind of show. It tricks you by sort of covering that up with a layer of like the main character, this sword teacher being like, "Oh, I'm just some guy from the sticks. I'm not that cool or awesome," but then it turns out that he's like super cool and awesome, even though he never acknowledges that he's super cool and awesome. And all of his students that he taught in the past, who are like at least 10 years or so younger than him, want to fucking ride his sword so fucking bad. Oh my god. It's actually kind of annoying how immediately all of these cute anime girls who were once his students want to suck his cock so fucking bad. And the gags are not all that good. Like the extensive gags of the silver-haired girl speaking under her breath for a very long time and then him not hearing it, not funny. Especially because it's like she's not really speaking under her breath. She's just sort of talking at the same volume as everything else. I will say the fight scenes are pretty decent, or they were better than I was expecting, because they are like pretty good CG action scenes. You really don't know they're CG until like a few aspects of it stick out. If you haven't been watching anime for as long as I have, you probably wouldn't have noticed that this is CG. It's pretty good at it, but there were a few tells for me, in terms of like the textures of certain objects, in particular the swords. They were decent. And then as the show went on, it was just sort of what made me go like, why am I watching this? Is I realized that our super badass but totally humble main character, he doesn't really want anything. He doesn't really have any motivation to do anything other than, well, I guess I'm a special instructor at the academy now. I guess I need to do this job now. Like, he didn't fight super hard to keep his backwater swordmaster title. He didn't, like, really fight super hard for that, so I guess he didn't care that much about it. I don't know what this guy wants. Like, he is a super boring guy. Like, there are potential aspects of him that could be made interesting with how he actually does think he's, like, not that good. But, like, the whole thrust of the show is, like, all the other characters in this show recognize how good he is and want to promote him up the ladder as quickly as possible instead of keeping him in this backwater town. But he doesn't recognize that. So, like, there's potential there. But he just doesn't want anything, really, it seems like. So, I don't really care about where he goes. Because he's just a kind of boring dude. So I guess that's the big failure of this show, is that the main character is just super boring. Also, he looks like an older Rudius from Mushoku Tensei. Like, shockingly close in design. Same hair color, same eye color, same clothing, like, color palette. They are weirdly similar in design. I do wonder if that was intentional. But anyway, I just find this guy so boring, so I don't really care to continue.
Alright, Country Bumpkin off the list. Up next, the unaware Atelier Meister. Almost said Master again, like the last show. No clue at all what this is. Have not heard anyone talk about it. Fuck it, we ball.
No. Just... No. So incredibly mediocre across the board. Opening action scene was super mid. Like, choreography was basically non-existent. And the pacing of the action was pretty bad. Do not give a shit about this clumsy twink protagonist at all. At first I was like, so it's like, it's one of those ones where the main character immediately gets kicked out of the party that he's part of because he sucks ass. But at first it was like, I'm the guy who does all the chores for the party. And I was like, oh, maybe it'll, like, actually be that. For real. And then we would get to see, like, someone who is just there to just sort of do odds and ends for the party. And just sort of, like, do the support stuff for the team. That would be cool. That would be, like, a interesting, nope, you're just kicking him out of the party because he sucks. Awesome. And I was like, well, kind of saw that coming. Maybe there'll be... And then it was like, it is a law of this world that you can only have 4 members in a party. I'm like, okay, arbitrary bullshit to get the plot moving. Cool. No thanks. Don't care. Next.
Alright, unaware Atelier off the list. Next is Slime 300 Season 2. I forget what the full title for this one is, but it's the I've been killing slimes for 300 years or whatever. This is the other Aoi Yuki show this season. Thought the first season was pretty good, even if it was rough around the edges. I think the first season might have actually been pre-seasonal wrap-up show, actually. That might have come out, like, before I started doing this, because I know I've been waiting on this second season for a long fucking time. I'll have to look up when exactly that came out after this. But for right now, let's hope that it still is good.
So I went back and checked the archives, and actually I had finished the first season of Slime 300 just before I started the seasonal wrap-up show, because I forgot that I actually started the seasonal wrap-up show halfway through the spring season of 2021. So I had already finished a bunch of shows from that season by that point, and Slime 300 was one of those. So I technically don't have my thoughts on that, which is a shame, because whatever things I liked about that are not here anymore. I got through an episode and a half of season 2 of, what's the full title? I've been killing slimes for 300 years and maxed out my level. It's an isekai, and there's nothing here. It's so incredibly boring and so incredibly mediocre looking. I really don't get, like, what is interesting. The comedy's not good. The slice of life stuff's not good. The fantasy stuff is mildly curious, but that's about it. I remember the first season being much more active with its comedy. Maybe I was wrong in that regard, but that's at least what I remember. And I also remember Aoi Yuki having a much better performance in the first season. If you're not familiar, Aoi Yuki is Mao Mao in Apothecary Diaries. She's also Tanya in Tanya the Evil. So she has this very distinctive voice that's not always, and I'm gonna be real, she doesn't always deliver the best performance. Like the So I'm a Spider, So What? I actively disliked her performance in that. In this one, it just feels like it's not all there. Like, she's not... Like, the script isn't giving her enough good stuff to work with, and B, the good stuff that she has just feels very toned back or, like, not executed all that well. So, whoever is doing the voice direction for this is not utilizing her talents in any way. So, kind of a shame that it took 4 years for this sequel to come out, only for it to be... I wouldn't even call this mediocre. I would just call this not good. Also, the studio changed from a studio that's only done like half a dozen anime to a studio that has done one anime. And that one anime is this anime. And again, I don't remember the first one being particularly good looking, but I also remember it at least being a little more visually active with its comedy. I think a lot of what's happened maybe is now it's just mostly is the main cast is like mostly solid now, mostly solidified, so we've stopped adding people to the main cast. And I think that was a lot of the appeal of the first season, is these wacky weirdos. And that's not there anymore. So the plot just kind of has to survive on mild comedy antics, and it just doesn't have it.
Alright, Slime 300, Season 2, coming off the list, unfortunately. A lot of unfortunate drops so far. Anyway, next is the Gorilla Gods Go-To Girl. Have not heard a single person talk about this show. Probably going to be a comedy or something. Let's find out what it is.
Well, I got through more of that than I expected, but it's still not worth finishing, unfortunately. I got through about 2.5 episodes of the Gorilla Gods Go-To Girl, which is a unnecessary amount of alliteration. It's just pretty plain overall. The animation is super basic. Character designs are super basic. Kind of cute, but really there's nothing. It's so incredibly plain that I really don't have a lot to talk about with it. Like, it's a basic fantasy world where people get powers from animals. Specifically, animal gods bestow powers on them. And the main character, who is a cute girl, gets gorilla god powers, so she is gorilla strong. Which of course meant that my mind immediately started cooking up the dumbest jokes and the bluest jokes possible. Like, so if she gets pregnant, is she gonna shotgun that baby out of her? Stuff like that was way more entertaining than watching this show, even though it wasn't a bad show necessarily. If I were to watch this, it would probably be like a straight 5 or like a light 5, just kind of totally average. What actually made me drop it though was just like a very, very obviously, like, the animation is not good or not impressive for this show, and it's like, it's a scenario of like, main character needs to cut her bangs, and so then she cuts her bangs, but she cuts them like jaggedly and like too short and shit, and so then she goes to her hairdresser to fix them, and then her bangs are longer than before. Now, I don't know exactly how hair works, but it kind of, visually, it just looks like we ended up back at square one, even though supposedly the problem was solved. So that was weird. But again, it's just sort of a very, like, you can just see all of the beats coming constantly of her, like, accidentally being super strong all the time, of her trying to hide her gorilla powers because she's embarrassed by it, of all the pretty boys that surround her because she's super strong and impressive, and how that causes problems for the jealous bitches around her. Just very standard for the genre, I guess. After 2.5 episodes, I've kind of gotten everything I really need out of it, I guess.
Alright, Gorilla God's Go-To Girl is coming off the list. Next is I'm the Evil Lord of an Intergalactic Empire. I believe this one's actually an isekai, but like sci-fi themed. And also very nihilistic, or I guess sadistic, I guess. Based on what I saw from the first episode impressions. I didn't see anybody talk about this after the first episode, but let's give it a go.
So this is the price we pay for 2D mech fights, I guess. What a shame. This show sucks. This fucking woe is me, redo the healer ass, my life sucks, everybody betray. I'm fed up with this world, everybody betray me, fucking room ass protagonist. It's just like, I don't care, man. I really don't. His life goes down the shitter in regular Japan-ass world, so when he gets reincarnated, I guess he becomes a super evil guy. And, that's the show, I presume. No interest in that whatsoever. Also, this dude's name is Liam in the new isekai world, and I just can't take that seriously for some reason. I don't know why, but Liam is not a intergalactic demon lord name. It's just not. Pick a different name, man. Also, the color design is like all over the place for this. It's just doesn't real. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. No, it's bad. This is bad.
Alright, take the edgy sci-fi off the list. Goodbye. Next is Maebashi Witches. I have heard mixed things about this one, in the sense of I've heard that the show is not really well written, but it has a lot of really cool concepts in it, which could go either way. So let's see what this is all about.
Oh my fucking god, the pacing. No. I got about 9 minutes into Maebashi Witches. No. First of all, the character designs are bad. I do not like these character designs. They look like weird alien creatures. The proportions just don't look right for some reason. It's not that they're like janky or like or melty or anything. It's just that the actual designs that they go with just don't look right. And I don't like them. But also, the pacing in this show, man. Too fast. Too fucking fast. And I watched Tsutomu Mizushima anime. Actually, I shouldn't even bring that up because Mizushima actually knows how pacing works in comedy. He knows how timing works. Whether it's exposition or punchlines or emotional beats or anything like that. This show is just rapid fire, info. And you know, it's not that I was getting confused. It's not that I was losing track of information. It was good at delivering the important information to you without getting you confused. But the emotional pace of it all is fucking exhausting. It was strenuous to keep up with the speed of this show. There is no pacing. It's just foot on the gas. There's no, like, pacing out of the emotions of characters or anything to, like, hit, like, emotional story beats. It's just fucking floor it. It's so... No. I just can't. I really can't. And with the character designs being what they are, I would never make it through this show. I just can't.
Alright, this off the list right now. With that said, I think it's time for an end cap. So, let's jump down to Mobile Suit Gundam GQuuuuuX. I believe is how you pronounce it. I'm not entirely sure, but boy, I am hyped for this. I am fairly knowledgeable about Gundam. Not super much so. I have seen all the stuff that I need to watch this. Granted, I saw it a long time ago, but I'm gonna jump into it anyway because I'm hyped. I love me Kazuya Tsurumaki. Let me see what he does to Gundam.
Whew, boy, that's a lot to digest. That was a lot at the end. Anyway, just finished up Mobile Suit Gundam GQuuuuuX, directed by Kazuya Tsurumaki of Fooly Cooly fame and Die Buster fame, and depending on how you want to interpret it, the Ava rebuilds. This show was wild. So, in case you are unfamiliar with what this show's vibe is, this is an alternate universe version of the events of Universal Century, which is weird to say since, like, all Gundams are technically alternate universes, but very specifically, the premise for GQuuuuuX is, what if Char found the Gundam that the Federation was building before Amuro did, and then used it to help Zeon win the 1-year war. Which is a very interesting premise in terms of, like, the metafictionality of it all. And it's... Sorry, I'm trying to... My thoughts are very jumbled on this ending. A, because the ending jumbles up a lot of ideas, but B, because there's just so much to work through with what this show attempted to accomplish in a very short time frame. Because there's the obvious, like, metafiction element of this is essentially Gundam fanfiction, and, like, officially sanctioned Gundam fanfiction at this point. And so, in a lot of ways, it plays out in a very fanfiction-y kind of sense, but, like, in a good way, for the most part. Like, it brings out a lot of... It brings up a lot of very interesting, like, what-if scenarios. Like, well, if Zeon won the 1-year war, and then the Federation just kind of loses its grip on all of the sides and all of their strongholds and such, what does that world look like? Who's in charge? Oh, because Amuro is not there at the end of 0079, that means Chalia Bull doesn't die when he faces off against him, so Chalia Bull ends up being a major character in this. I had completely forgotten who Chalia Bull was until I looked him up, and I was like, oh, he's that guy! I remember now. Now, because I have not seen 0079 since, like, 2016, I think. Was probably the last time I watched it. So it's been a hot minute, but it's kind of hard to forget Gundam once you've watched it, so I wasn't exactly missing out on a lot of information. If you have seen the original Gundam series once, you will be fine with this show. Although I would also recommend Zeta as well. Not only because Zeta's really good, but because it does have some elements from Zeta that show up here, whether it's like the major elements like the cyber new types. 4 gets rewritten as this character do. Whether it's like big elements like that, where it's like, oh, now that since Zeon isn't really a thing well, again, I also haven't seen Zeta in a very long time, but where it's like, oh, so the Federation's not the dominant force in 0085, which is when GQuuuuuX takes place. That leads to them developing the cyber new types as a way to combat Zeon, I think, is what was implied with that one. Also, I do want to give a shout out to Machu just being having a little bit of Camille in her and just kicking an immigration officer in the nuts. A+. We love it. You love to see it. So there's the, like, obvious fanfiction meta elements of this. But then also, as the series goes on, you realize, oh, like, metafiction is sort of, like, actually important to the plot, because it turns out, yes, this is a multiverse show. This is... Now, I've heard that the ending of Turn A Gundam has some multiverse elements to it. I haven't seen it to confirm, so I don't know what that is. But I think this is a little bit different from that. Where it's like, quite literally, like, we have characters from other timelines meeting each other and interacting with each other in ways that vary in how interesting they are, I guess you could say. Which sort of leads me to one of my criticisms of GQuuuuuX on the whole is, while I very much do like the characters, I think they're very fun, I think their interactions are really good, I also don't think they're going to be very memorable afterwards, especially with like how the back half of this series plays out, because the back half of the series really takes over the like we are doing Gundam fanfiction now stuff. And so the original characters like Machu and Nyan and Shuji kind of end up, they're not in terms of how they interact with the plot, but in how their goals, how much their goals are important to the plot, they really take a backseat in the last at least 4-ish episodes. And so they don't really feel like, is it what's the word I'm looking for? Is it, am I asking too much when I say, like, am I expecting too much when I say, like, Machu is not as memorable as Amuro, Nyan is not as memorable as Char? That's not like a one-to-one comparison of our character archetypes, but you get what I'm getting at here, is I don't think about the core new cast of GQuuuuuX at the end of all of this the same way I thought about the main cast of 0079 when I finished that show. And you might say, well, they're doing different things, so it's not really fair to compare, but the fact that we are using the story of 0079 as a major part of the plot of the show, I think it does invite comparisons, actually. I kind of think it does. Because, like, yeah, this show really, really tried to do a lot. I wanted to be... sorry, I'm a little tired. I wanted it to be, like, a little bit... No, what was I saying? Like, I wanted to, like, really give the show the benefit of the doubt when I heard that it was only one core, because Gundam always does way too much stuff. Even when it has a full 50 episodes, it is doing a lot. So I wanted to be like, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt and say that Tsurumaki knows how to wrap up a one-core show. Should be fine. And in the end, there wasn't, aside from the very last episode where some wonky stuff happened, I don't think it was necessarily a bad way to approach it overall, but it felt a lot less memorable in the long run. There weren't any... Like, I binged everything except the final episode the day it came out. The day before the final episode came out. So like the Monday before the final episode came out, I binged everything that was out already. It was like, which shows you how into the show I was. Despite my many criticisms of it, I do still really like what happened in the show. Like, in particular, the first half really was really strong in terms of developing, not necessarily develop, but just showcasing Machu as an interesting, just kind of a fucking brat, who falls into this world of, this clan battle stuff that gives us a good reason to put this character in a mobile suit and have her start interacting with it, and the way that she and Shuji interact with this sort of new type space. That's one of the other things that really hooked me about GQuuuuuX for a while, is I really loved its interpretation of, I don't know what the term for it is, but this new type vision. The way that new type sensory experience is conveyed in this show is so fascinating and fucking beautiful to look at. It is gorgeous, and I think the fact that it is beautiful is, like, important. This is one of the things where the visual elements are, in fact, part of the narrative, because it's like, you really get the sense of, like, oh, being a new type is just unlike anything else. And so, like, yes, I understand. You really get a sense for, why Machu would want to be in the Gundam. Why she wants to be in this space. Even if it ends up causing the deaths of people around her, like with Shiko, this former Federation ace pilot who gets so taken in by revenge that she ends up dying by Shuji's hands. And I actually really liked Machu's response to that. Not in like a moral way, but in like found it fascinating kind of way, where she was like, this is what it takes to survive and to reach new type space. I'm like, wait, no, honey, no, stop, don't. So yes, I really appreciated the new type elements of the show. And I also appreciated how fucking beautiful this show is. Very good looking, great character designs, great color work. The color work is fucking phenomenal in this show. I loved the little nods to either past Gundam series or past series that Tsurumaki has worked on. There were quite a few Fooly Cooly references here and there. Like the tumbling cell phone in the first episode is a reference to Naota tumbling across the bridge in the first episode of Fooly Cooly. Really good show. Despite the CG mechs, they were really well polished CG mechs. The action was really fucking good, very visceral and impacting. And the mech designs were actually pretty solid too. I did not like the CG reinterpretation of the RX-78. I felt the face was a little too busy. But I liked the GQuuuuuX. Thought that was a pretty solid design. Yeah, I just... sorry, I don't know why I'm so tired. I don't know why I'm so tired. It's barely 8 o'clock. yeah, I really, my thoughts are just all over the place on this series because it's like it also really has a knows how to show sort of reverence for certain Gundam concepts. Like I felt like the most of the Lala stuff was handled really well. Maybe it's just because I have a certain reverence for 0079, as any self-respecting anime fan should. Where it's like, oh, this is like super important stuff that I'm looking at. And I thought the reinterpretation of her, like what happens if she never really got in contact with Char in this year. Well, not necessarily didn't get, but like just didn't stay in contact with Char after the events of the 1 Year War because Char just goes missing in this Zeknova incident thing, which is like this weird. It's a way to incorporate multiverse stuff and like sort of space time travel of sorts into the narrative, and in a way that first presents itself as a mystery and then slowly it gets revealed of like, oh, this is multiverse stuff. I have one kind of quibble with the ending though. Aside from A, how fast it moves, and B, how much information they cram into it, but there's one specific thing that does kind of bother me. In 0079, sorry if you haven't seen 0079 yet, of course I'm going to spoil it because we're talking about a show that is fan fiction of 0079. So if you haven't seen that, go watch it. It's important that you watch 0079. So in 0079, Lala is killed by Amuro as she tries to defend Char. And that causes like one of the most visually impacting moments in anime that I've ever seen. Like the new typeness flooding into Amuro's brain there has stuck with me for almost a decade now, and I only saw it once. So that's why I'm bringing up this moment specifically, because it is so stuck in my brain. In this show, they bring up a bunch of like multiverse stuff where it's just a succession of actually Amuro kills Char as Lala tries to save him, and that sort of breaks her, and it causes this cascade of multiverses where she keeps trying to save Char, which is an interesting concept that I wish was brought up before the final episode. But also, as I pointed out, that's not what happens in 0079. Lala dies defending Char. So, I don't think that moment really... So the way that it presents itself in GQuuuuuX as like this Lala as this Homura Okabe type type character of stuck in a time loop to try and save the person they care about. It's a good concept, but for this character specifically, you kind of can't do it that way. If it was Char constantly trying to save Lala, that would make sense. That would make more sense for the character. But not Lala trying to save Char, because that was never an issue in the original. She succeeded in defending Char, in saving Char, by giving up her own life. So, for that to be like the ultimate reason of why Lala has become the focal point of this multiverse energy buildup, that's right, I didn't even get to talk about that. For her to become the focal point of it for that reason doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I feel like I have so much more to say about this show because there's honestly a lot to talk about here. Like, I love Machu's, like, sort of realization of, like, oh, maybe I'm not as special as I thought I was. And how that leads to a fracturing of her friendship with Nyan. And sort of Nyan just trying to figure out where the hell she belongs in this world. Which, again, I think would have had way more impact if this show had been like at least 2 cores. Because then we could have really delved into like, oh, what is Nyan's life actually like, aside from the fact that she is poor, I think. We don't really see what her life... We get a vague glimpse of some kind of criminal record or something. And then I think Machu also has some kind of criminal record, I think, or something, or some kind of past issue that's only showed in like brief flashes of imagery. We could have, if we had more time, we could have delved into like, oh, why is Machu predisposed to this almost megalomania that she starts to display as the series goes on? Why is it just because she's dissatisfied with a really standard home life? That seems to be the case so far, but like we could have expounded. That seems to be the case in what we saw from GQuuuuuX, but we could have expounded on that more, really dug deep into that concept specifically. We could have gotten anything about Shuji other than the Gundam talks to him and he's in love with Lala, maybe, or just shows about a ton of admiration for her. Also, all the attempts at like romance in this do not pan out at all. It's super rushed. It's just I don't feel it as much as the show thinks I should be feeling it. Man, I thought I was going to have a lot more positive stuff to say about GQuuuuuX, but I do think it fumbled the ball a little bit. I think it got too big for its britches for the amount of time that it had. It's still a really fun show. Like, it is a wild ride, especially like I say especially as a fan of the original Gundam, but like you can't watch this if you haven't seen the original Gundam. Like, you just can't. You're not gonna get it. You're just not gonna get it. So only watch this if you have seen 0079. But even then, it's like, this is not gonna stick with me the way that show did. And again, I feel like I am justified in making that comparison because this is fan fiction of that show. It is directly comparing itself to 0079 in a roundabout way. Directly in a roundabout way. Yeah, that makes sense. So, And it's not impossible for a 12-episode show to have a huge amount of impact. Like, speaking of Homura earlier, Madoka had a huge amount of impact for the little time that it had. Yeah, ultimately I'm just a little bit let down at where we ended up compared to where we started. And even compared to like most of the rest of the show, I guess. Disappointing ending to a show that's otherwise really, really fun.
Okay, GQuuuuuX is complete. And we're going to scroll decently high up on the list, but not all the way up. We're going to put you in the number 6 spot for now. Yeah, we're going to give you a light 8. I still really enjoyed my time with it, final episode notwithstanding. It was a fun thing to watch one time, and I'm glad I did.